What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to episode 37 of MorWrestling's podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Morrison. I'm joined today by my co-host, Zach Rolfe, and we have a special guest on. Go ahead and introduce her, Zach.
Yeah, so we got Skylar Grote, U23 national champion, senior nationals runner-up, competed for Blair Academy. You know, you see her on Twitter all the time. One of the best follows on Twitter. How you doing, Skylar?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Nice to kind of meet you here.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about Blair, because I don't know much about women's program or anything like that at Blair. So what were you were competing at Blair?
Yeah, so there was actually no women's program at Blair. I was the only girl on the boys team. So I wrestled for their B team while I was there for all 4 years, but I ended up being the only girl. So definitely a difficult journey for me, but I don't regret it. It was one of the best things that has ever happened to me. So, and it definitely, helped me go to a good college and have a good work ethic. So I loved my time at Blair.
That's awesome. This kind of all started with some might say it was controversial. I know we're kind of all on the same page where it wasn't, but kind of sounded like you got a little berated over a pretty simple tweet, in my opinion. What kind of happened? What brought that tweet up?
Yeah, I mean, recently I started working with a lot of young kids, especially over quarantine since I'm home now in New Jersey and I finished my senior year online here in New Jersey at home. I decided, while I'm here, I want to pick up coaching a little bit when I'm not training. So I started coaching young kids and, I saw some of the parents encouraging their kids to lose, 5 or more pounds as 10 and 12-year-olds. And, I have had a rough journey with cutting weight myself. And I wish that I knew what I know now back then, because I think it could have saved me from a lot of bad weight cuts and a lot of miserable times. That kind of like sparked my tweet. And then, I didn't really think it was that controversial. And then a whole bunch of people came at me and I was like, wow, like good thing I brought it up because people still don't know. And people still don't know enough about nutrition and nutrition with wrestling.
So kind of take me through like an ideal cut for you, and like maybe how much of a cut, what are you doing to get there, how are you bringing your body down the right way?
Yeah, so obviously it's not like I don't believe in losing weight or cutting weight or whatever you want to call it. As a senior level athlete, a lot of them do cut a little bit of weight. I cut a little bit of weight too. But I do it in a way that's healthy and I do it weeks and weeks out. I'm not cutting it the day before. So I would say the most I cut is around 10 pounds, but like the most water weight that I'm cutting is usually around 3% of what I wrestle at. So I wrestle at 149. So my water cut is about 4.5 pounds max. So that's worked for me. And that's kind of what I do now. But, you see people cutting 10 pounds of water and then go out there and try to wrestle. Even on the senior level, that's definitely going to affect your performance. So they say anything more than 3 to 5% is too much to cut. And I totally agree with that. I've tested it. I personally think 3% is my max. Some people will say 5% works for them. 5% honestly for me is too much. So it definitely depends on the person and you definitely have to experiment with it. But 3% is like my max the week of that I want to cut.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a ton of different approaches to weight cutting. I mean, even right now, if you look with the Olympic weights, they're way spread out. There's, people have to make a choice of either going down or going up. The big one everybody looks at right now is James Green, where he's a huge 65 pounder and he's a small 74 pound or kilos, not pounds, obviously. So looking at that, I'm in the belief that there has to be some kind of weight cut at a higher level, right? Yeah. Once you get, I mean, even sort of in the high school level, you got those kids who are striving for state titles. Somebody's going to cut a little bit. I like the idea that you kind of have there with the 3% of your body weight of a water cut. I never really looked at it that way. So I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because I might even be using that next year going into my high school season. So
Yeah, you should. It works really well. But again, I'm not against cutting weight, but like my definition of cutting, like I'm not against losing weight. I'm against like cutting weight. I'm against cutting lots of water weight, but I'm not against losing weight. If you start, a couple or several weeks out as a high school athlete, if you have, a little bit of weight to lose or whatever, you stepped on that scale, it gave you your cert weight or whatever, and it says, you can healthily lose 1.5 pounds a week. If you do that the right way and you start early enough, and you're losing that 1.5 pound a week by eating healthy and maybe doing an extra little bit of cardio, that's okay. I'm totally not against that. But if you have to decrease your calories so much that you're miserable and you're cutting 10 pounds of water before you compete, I'm against that. That just leads to bad relationships with food for the rest of your life. And we see that in past wrestlers who are in their 40s and 50s. They're like super overweight, or they keep eating because they restricted their food for so long. I mean, it happens to a lot of wrestlers, and it's not talked about enough.
yeah, no, I totally agree. Now, a big point of the counter arguments people were making on Twitter were the definition of cutting weight. Like, what is specifically cutting weight? And I know I kind of put my idea out there. I don't think Dylan really got into that. What would be your specific definition of what's cutting weight?
Yeah, so cutting weight to me, I guess there's like a good way and a bad way of cutting weight. I like to refer to the right way to do it as losing weight. Cutting weight to me is, when you're cutting water and you're severely depleting your body of the nutrients that it needs. So I think that cutting weight, yes, that's my definition at least. I know other people were saying that their definition was like eating healthy and stuff. No, that's not cutting weight. Cutting weight is not eating healthy and getting down to your weight class that way. Cutting weight is like, the 2 or 3 days before you compete, you're barely eating, you're in a sauna suit on the treadmill. That's cutting weight to me. And I'm against that. I'm not against losing that 3% in the last couple of days before you compete and cutting that little bit of weight there. I'm not against that, but cutting more than that 3%, and when your life is miserable doing that, I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good for the sport. I don't think it's good for one's health. And I think that it needs to be talked about more. But, like I said, I've gone through cutting weight too. When I wrestled at Blair, I was cutting like 10 pounds a week. And not that 10 pounds was extremely crazy, but I just didn't know the right way to do it. I remember like it being a Wednesday, and Wednesday it was my last meal. And then on Thursday, I would have like 2 clementines and like a chocolate bar, because chocolate bars barely weigh anything. And I would drink like 2 water bottles. And then Friday would come and I would have like some popcorn. And then I would compete on Saturday. So, I've definitely been through that extreme cutting weight, stupid mentality of, if I work out and I lose 3 pounds, I'm only going to put 3 pounds back into me. I've done all that, and I've been there, I've done that. It's miserable. It's literally miserable. So I think that finding a weight class that you can make, not necessarily easily, but not something that's going to like give you an eating disorder and make your life miserable. I think it's super important for high schoolers to know the right way of losing weight / cutting weight, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no, we're totally in agreement there. But the original tweet, we talked about was children cutting weight, your youth wrestlers cutting weight, and this is where I get completely dumbfounded by anybody arguing. Sorry, guys, my dogs are in here fighting.
Okay.
I don't understand how anybody can disagree with the idea that youth should be cutting weight.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of the times parents think that their kids have to cut weight in order to be competitive, or in order to win, and in order to, be the biggest in their weight class or whatever. But we also have to take a step back and realize that, cutting weight, cutting more than 2 or 3, I'm not talking about cutting 2 or 3 pounds as a kid. Like if your kid, he or she has to cut out white bread or something, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about young kids having to work out 3 times a day and restrict their food and stuff, that's just not okay. And that's taking the fun out of the sport. That's actually bad habits. I would say that's bad habits
Absolutely.
for a young child. And I'm totally against that. I think that my philosophy, even for myself, is if I work out 2 times a day, which is too much for a child, but I'm a senior level athlete. If I work out 2 times a day and I'm eating healthy, that's all I can do. There's nothing else that I can possibly do. And whatever my weight is after that, I just have to go with it. So that's kind of my philosophy. That's what works for me. I'm not going to like starve myself to make a lower weight class. I just kind of have to accept that that's where my body wants to be and go the weight class that if I'm doing those two things, wherever my weight is, that's what I do. As a child, I don't really know what an elite young kid's schedule is like. Maybe wrestling 5 times a week, once a day, maybe a couple extra cardios in there. I'm not really sure, but if your kid's doing that and they're eating healthy and you're not restricting ice cream every once in a while from that kid, if whatever their weight is after that, they should wrestle that weight class. The kid should not be skipping meals 2 or 3 days out. The kid should not be in a sweatsuit at age 10 on a treadmill. But obviously, when you're a young kid and as a parent, if you're swapping out, I had one little kid, he was 85 pounds, and I was giving him lessons, and his mom was like, he has to make 82 pounds because that's like, he has to go 82 because that's where a gap in the lineup is. And I was like, okay, it's 3 pounds. That's really not that bad. I was like, what is he eating? And she told me what he was eating. And, there was definitely room for improvement. So I suggested to her, I was like, okay, instead of this, like give him some fruit. And instead of like the white bread, give him whole wheat bread. And we made like a couple changes and he was down 5 pounds in like a month.
Oh,
Just
wow.
from making those little changes, just healthier options, healthier choices, and he lost the weight easy and was able to compete at 82 pounds for the whole year. So, I'm not against that. I'm not against making those little changes as long as you're not like restricting your child. If your child goes to a birthday party and you're telling your kid, no brownies, no cookies the whole time, it just leads to bad relationships with food, in my opinion.
Yeah, I kind of was in a similar. I kind of tweeted about it a little bit. I was in a similar situation with my son going into the state tournament. He was like 2 pounds over the weight below, and I said that I debated with myself. I was like, do I really want to, adjust his diet? He's only 7 years old. You know what I mean? Like, do I want to go through telling him, hey, we're doing this because we're gonna let you wrestle a lower weight class, or he wants to have an extra, he wants to have dessert on Wednesday night, and I have to be like, nah, you can't do that. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like my 7-year-old should have to go through that at the moment. So,
Yeah, no.
I don't. He's not an elite wrestler by any means, though. So, I don't know why parents would sit there and think, yeah, let me change my 7 to 10-year-old's whole routine because he's a little heavier.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think that like changing some things is bad, like changing white bread to whole wheat bread. That's something that you should do. Honestly, for your child's health, that's something you should do. But if you have to change their whole diet so they're eating like half of what they're normally eating and they're not getting enough, nutrients and stuff, then that's too far. But, little adjustments, you don't want your kid eating McDonald's every day anyway. So if your kid's eating McDonald's 2 times a week, then yeah, maybe you should probably, cut that out, maybe only once a month. So I think that like healthy habits are super important. But if your kid already has healthy habits and is already working out a decent amount, then you shouldn't change it anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for the most part, you're in complete control of your kid's diet. So if you're making those little changes like the whole wheat breads or anything like that, like they're not even going to notice. And
Exactly.
if they do, you just say, "Hey, I decided to buy this one today." Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it wouldn't be anything where the kid really has to sacrifice really anything in that situation. Um,
Exactly.
my other point of it is, why are we focused on their weight at 7 to 12 years old? Why are we focused on getting them better at wrestling?
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
That's like that was a main thing for me too personally. I remember when I was cutting weight in high school, like all I thought about the whole practice was how much weight am I going to lose? Like how much weight did I lose? Like I only have 20 minutes left of practice. Like am I going to be able to lose the last 2 pounds that I have left? So my focus went away from wrestling and went more towards, how much weight can I lose in this practice? So, like even for me, I just think that my mind went other places and I wasn't getting better at wrestling because all I cared about was, how much weight I was losing in a workout. And, it's super important for kids, especially at a young age, to just focus on wrestling and get better at wrestling. And, I had one person come back to me on Twitter and say, oh, well, my kid's going to get beat up if he's too small for his weight class or whatever. I was like, I'd rather my kid get beat up than form an eating disorder. Like, are you kidding me? Like, they're 10 years old. Like, who cares if they get beat up because they're, a couple pounds lighter? And then the person was like, well, that's not good for, his mind either. That might make him quit. Well, if your kid quits because he's getting beat up, then he wasn't meant for the sport anyway.
Not only that, but it goes more than, they're getting beat up and that's why they're quitting. It's probably because you have an underlying reason for that too. You're probably putting too much pressure on them winning and losing, which clearly you are if you want them to lose weight to win matches.
Yeah. Yeah, so. That's true. Yeah, exactly. Like winning at 10 years old and, it's so crazy that parents, I mean, everybody wants to win. Don't get me wrong. Like everybody wants to win. I understand that. I understand the competitiveness of wrestling, but there comes a point where it's like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to, create unhealthy habits for your kid just so that they win? Like, look at the long-term health of your child. It's just people are crazy. They really are.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dylan. What were you gonna say?
Well, no, I just was gonna say as far as the technique goes, like some of these kids that go to practice, they're more prone to injury because they are focusing on their cutting weight. I know some coaches that, most kids try to wear, their sweats or maybe a sweatshirt, long sleeve shirt, whatever it is, to burn extra calories during practice. And obviously, coaches don't like that because first it's slowing you down. You're more prone to get caught up in whether it's your hand getting caught up in loose clothing. But yeah, no, it definitely slows you down. And there's a fine difference between cutting weight, like you said, the unhealthy way, and then, watching your weight, as you said, changing up your diet a little bit. Some of my kids on the team were like, I've got to cut this amount of weight between now and then. Well, no, you're not cutting weight. You've got plenty of time to lose weight the right way. You obviously just have to change your habits. And I agree with what you guys are saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we see that. I see it a lot on the high school level, because that's really when kids start to become super competitive. They want to win states, they want to do all that kind of stuff. And then they think that, if they cut a lot of weight, then they're going to be a lot stronger than their competition, blah, blah, blah. But in a lot of the cases, the kids would do just as well at an upper weight. So I think that, wrestling has kind of cultivated this idea that you have to cut weight to be good. And I think that that's a problem and we need to kind of move away from that. And I really had that mentality for a while. And I remember going to college and I remember, it was like my first tournament at Brock in Canada. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go like 67 kilos. Or I think I was like, I was going to go 65 kilos, but I was like 69 or something or 68. And my coach was like, why are you going 65 kilos? Like, you don't weigh 65 kilos. I was like, yeah, but I'm like 68, 69. Like, I'll make 65 kilos like pretty easy. And he was like, why are you going to cut weight? Like, there's no point in cutting weight. Just wrestle what you weigh, feel good. And, whatever, it is what it is. And I was like, huh. And that was the first time that perspective was shown to me. So I wrestled that tournament, whatever I weighed. And I was like, wow, I feel great. Like I didn't cut weight. I didn't cut water. I felt awesome. I had energy because I was eating and I wrestled really well. And then ever since that tournament, I have wrestled what I weigh. And it has made such a difference in my wrestling. And, it's really made me enjoy the sport so much more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know in my room during the season, I have a rule. You're not allowed to wear sweaters and sweatpants while wrestling, right? I let them wear it during warm-ups, but once warm-ups are over, it may be during instructional, but drilling and live, they're coming off. You're not wearing them because I want your full effort. I want your full attention, and I don't, there's no exceptions. I don't care how far over you are. My practice is not meant for you to lose weight. And
Yes.
I mean that's what I preach to them. Like if you wanna cut weight, you're gonna have to figure it out. It's not my job, right? I can give you advice and guide you, to where you want to be. But I'm not gonna, you're not gonna use my time to lollygag in my practice because you're too sucked out.
Yeah, I like that. That was a rule at Blair, and it was also a rule at my college. And, I thought it was a good one because, you got to take care of your diet and do it the right way. And when you're in that wrestling room, it's 2 hours of focus and getting better at wrestling, not, losing 2 or 3 pounds in that workout. So I really like the no sweats, no sweatshirt kind of thing. Maybe besides like the day before, then I could see, if you're just trying to get a pound or two off of water weight, I can understand that. But not at the beginning of the week, not 3 or 4 days out either. So I like that rule. I think it works well.
Yeah.
And to bring up part of your tweet as well, I mean, it was children cutting weight, right? So some of these children, obviously, I mean, all these children, they're being fed by their parents. The choices are by their parents, right? Cut this weight, lose this weight. Then some of these parents are the same ones that, I mean, it's something that I find myself not agreeing with. Little Johnny got his 100th win. Little Johnny got his 150th win, right? They're plastered on T-shirts. You're at a Pee Wee tournament. Little Johnny got his 500th win. And some of these parents are just more, I think, selfish around them. So like, hey, my kid's going to lose 5 pounds, be the bigger kid in the bracket, have these easier matches just to win. And I'm not gonna lie, I've got a kid that I think he had a 100th win. I'm like, whip-de-doo. Like, this was Pee Wee a couple years ago, and now he's in the modified room, and I'm trying to help him with a single leg because he didn't focus on technique, whereas he focused on maybe losing weight in the practice room instead of, doing the right thing, technique. So, yeah.
I think, we're all learning. I've been involved in the sport for 15 years. On my 10th year in the sport, I finally figured it out how to cut weight and how to do it right. So, it takes experience, it takes time, it takes education. And I think that that's what I'm trying to help people with, educate people on, the do's and don'ts of cutting weight. And, some parents thought what I thought, you have to cut weight to be good. It was just a lack of education, really. But then once someone shared a different perspective with me, and I realized that that was the better way to do things, I adopted those ways. And now I just like, I hope that I can help other people do that as well. So I really just think it's education and a lack of education in the sport. And, just kind of like a continued tradition that cutting weight is, what wrestling is when it's really not at all. So, I think you can't blame people. I mean, it's been like that for forever. I think that it's just important now to get the word out that, it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times that education actually comes from an experience where, somebody had a really bad cut and it didn't go well, and you're like, man, why did I do that? Why did I cut all that water? Why didn't I just eat right and bring my weight down a few weeks out? And it usually, unfortunately, takes something bad like you're not sleeping all night long because you're cramping up all night, or you don't compete well because you didn't cut the weight right. So hopefully people are listening to this and they're gonna be like, oh hey, these guys are making some good points. Maybe I should go up a weight or something like that.
Well, I applaud you because, I mean, you got 1,716 likes. And talking about bad times for wrestling, right? So my buddy won a New York State title. He went to Springfield. He was lost in the round of 12 at Nationals, sophomore and junior year. Well, his senior year, he had a struggle getting back down to 197, and he quit wrestling during a winter break. He didn't go back. Probably would have All-American that year. He was ranked, I think, top 5 in the country. Well, I think he just had a post on Instagram saying like how wrestling changed his life in a way of like negative eating and whatnot. Then again, he should have made healthier decisions, whatever he was eating. His diet, especially in college, right? Kids are, especially some maybe D3 guys are focusing their attention other places on the weekends maybe as well. But that definitely hindered his ability to lose weight and then obviously focus in the wrestling room. And I think he has a negative outlook maybe on the sport just because of his lack of knowledge. I think cutting weight right now, he's in the best shape of his life. I think he's like a physical trainer and all that stuff, which it's great. But like if he had that knowledge and training and stuff like that a couple of years ago when he was at Springfield, I mean, his wrestling definitely would have changed.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot to learn. My perspective might change in a couple years or further down the line. I might find something that works even better than what I'm suggesting right now. And I probably will, as more science comes out and stuff, we constantly are learning. But I definitely know that what I was doing at one point is not the way to do it. And I know that through experience. I know that that 3% range is really good for me, and that I compete really well when I minimize how much water I cut. And I don't think I've wrestled without eating the day before in forever. Like, just think about it. How well can you really compete if you don't eat the day before? Not very well. Honestly, not very well. And maybe you get lucky a couple times and you compete okay, but you're definitely going to compete better when you're eating the day before you compete. So it's all a learning game, and I'm happy that I learned sooner rather than later. So yeah.
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 So go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was gonna kind of move on.
No, go ahead.
So I'd kind of talked to you a little bit after we kind of had that talk. I would like to pick your brain a little bit about women's wrestling. I have a baby girl that I hope gets into wrestling as she gets older, but I'm also on the Section 4 chair for trying to get sanctioned New York women's wrestling sanctioned. So I want to pick your brain a little bit. What kind of things would you say need to happen or should happen to help grow women's wrestling more than maybe it already is? I mean, obviously it's exponentially growing right now, but how can we continue and how can we get that to the next level in your opinion?
In my opinion, yeah. So there's still states right now that, women's wrestling is not that big. I know that now in New Jersey, there's a couple clubs that have like 20 or so women, but that's not everywhere. And especially like New York, I don't really know how many clubs have a lot of women. I'm assuming it's not very many, but I think the main thing for me growing up, and I think the main thing for a lot of young girls now, is they don't really feel welcomed. They go into a club and they're the only girl there, and that already is discouraging. But then on top of that, they're not really looked at much. They're not really helped much. And that just adds to them wanting to quit. And I faced that a lot when I was younger. I had a lot of negativity, people telling me, I was a girl and I shouldn't be wrestling. And I think that there's less of that now. I think that people are a lot more open to girls wrestling and stuff. But I think that, when a little girl comes into a club and she's, the only girl there, one of a couple girls there needs to be a focus on that little girl so that she comes back. So I think that, it's up to the coaches to make her feel welcomed. It's up to the coaches to, kind of set the atmosphere so that she feels welcomed. When I was a young kid and I would go into club practices, all the boys would run away from me. And then it's like, okay, get a partner. And all the boys were away and I was just standing there and I didn't have a partner. And then I felt so uncomfortable because here I am as, a 10-year-old little girl and nobody wants to go with me. And I didn't know at 10 years old, oh, no one wanted to go with me, really. Well, I knew that they didn't want to go with me because I was a girl, but as a little 10-year-old, you think more than just that. You think that they don't like you or this and that. So I think that as a coach, you have to be like, you know what, you're going with her today. And I don't want to hear you saying that you don't want to or whatever. So I think it's really important for coaches to kind of set that tone and make it known that, that girl belongs.
Yeah, I had 6 girls in my room last year on my men's team, and it felt like we were moving in a really good direction. I had my AD on board to sanction the team, and then COVID hit, and 5 of my 6 girls decided they didn't want to come back, whether it was COVID related or any other reason. But man, it was rough seeing that because I had so many, I had a tournament planned out, and it would have been really cool to see how we can grow where we're at. And I know one of the goals in our section right now is I think we need 3 official women's teams to get a state committee on board so we can sanctioned New York wrestling. But
No, I think another way to grow women's wrestling, like, making the girls feel welcomed when they come in, that's one, but also, getting female clinicians to come to your clubs and, run a clinic or a practice or whatever. And, they can even run it with the boys too. There's a lot to learn from everybody in the sport. So if a female came in and ran a practice or a club and you had a couple little girls, that's important. That's important for them to see, someone that looks like them. And representation is super important for the growth of women's wrestling. So things like that, I think, are super important.
Hey, open invitation. Feel free to come to my club.
Course.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Where are you guys? New York?
Yeah, we're in New York. My barn it's out by Bath, New York.
Oh, okay. I used to go through Bath, New York on my way to Canada.
Oh, okay, yeah. So maybe you drove right past my barn. You never know.
Probably. I got pulled over there. But yeah, no, yeah, for sure, I'll come. So yeah, I know a lot of other women on the senior level that do the clinics and the camps and stuff. And you'd be surprised how many little girls start wrestling because they met a female wrestler and that's their reason. So I remember when I was a little girl, my dad took me to. I started wrestling because I saw my dad wrestling in the living room, but I think my dad knew how important it was for me to see other females in the sport, but there weren't many. So he would take me to the North Warren wrestling match, which was about 15 minutes away from my house. And there was a girl on the team and he took me to go watch her. And I just remember like wanting her autograph after she wrestled and stuff. And I thought she was so cool. And then she went on to wrestle on the college level and I followed her. So that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to keep wrestling, because I saw her accomplishing all this cool stuff and she was my role model. So it's important, to show that to young girls in the sport.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that because that's definitely something I hope to do with my daughter, and kind of help, network with what we're doing here. That way I can get to know more famous, or not famous, but female wrestlers that I can bring around my daughter and make her look up to you guys who are doing it right now. So definitely good advice there. Dylan, you got anything?
No, I mean, that's about wraps it up. It's great to get a female wrestler's voice on that subject, and then just the voice alone. I mean, I think you're the first female guest we've had on the show, and I know we want to bring on Wayne Fish, aka Derek Lemedusky, which he kind of runs. He does a few articles, I think, for Flow and freelances for AWN maybe as well. So just kind of get their outlook on women's wrestling and try to grow that in New York State. It'd be a big thing for us to do. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for all that you guys are doing for wrestling and for girls wrestling.
Yeah, hey, thanks a lot for coming on. That was a great conversation. I hope everybody listening learned something from this, because there was definitely a lot of good information. So thanks a lot, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again for listening to episode 37. That's all we got. Peace out.
Peace out. Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you liked the video. Hit the like button, comment down below, hit subscribe. Come back for more next time on More Wrestling.